This is the CCW Digital Speaker Spotlight Series. As always, I'm Brian Cantor, Principal Analyst for CCW Digital, and your host for today's discussion. Now, we know agents are the centerpiece of our customer experience. And while we certainly can expect them on their own to be dynamic, personable people who step up to the plate, it's up to us to give them the right bat to swing. We need to provide the right environment and the right tools in which to cultivate and leverage their skills. We, as the cliche goes, must perform for our agents before they can perform for our customers. Now, this means we need to pay specific attention to the role of workforce management. And we most certainly will at the upcoming CCW Vegas, the 20th anniversary of the program this June. But before we get there, we're joined by one of our faculty members, Thomas Kim of CIBC, who's going to share his take on this topic. So to start things off, Thomas, how are you?
I'm good. You, Brian?
I'm doing great. An absolute pleasure to be speaking with you. So as I mentioned, there's so much ambiguity when it comes to workforce management because when some people think about it, they're looking at the concept. How do I manage my agents? How, to put it literally, how do I manage my workforce? But then it can also be referred to as a specific category of technology or a specific set of processes, a specific methodology. So there's a lot of debate and discussion around what workforce management actually means. And I want your take. From your perspective, what does WFM entail within the contact center space?
Yeah, so WFM entails, I'm going to say, two major accountabilities. The first accountability is, yes, like you want to think about the systems that you implement from a workforce point of view, the data that you want to use to help optimize a contact center's capacity. But what I think the most important, I'm going to say, function or a role of WFM is like most people might kind of miss it, is the relationship manager role, where WFM also needs to understand how the business that it's supporting operates, and also the leaders and build relationships with the leaders that it's supporting. And why I say that is that from a workforce point of view, it's easy to get the data once you have the system built in through either your call routing software or WFM software. You could easily get, this is how many calls a contact center gets, this is what the HT or the average transaction time of a call would be, and you come up with like estimates in terms of this is how many people you'll need at certain hours and how many people you need to operate the business. However, the other side, the relationship manager role is quite important because when you just kind of give, I'm going to say, these types of this data-driven answers only to the business operators, it might get lost because you're kind of missing some of the context, because some of the recommendations you may recommend if you don't understand the business might kind of go against what the business wants for its employee engagement or just how it operates. So from a WFM perspective, the first role, is make sure you have the system and the data capturing properly and that you can recommend, the basic WFM, I'm going to say, initiatives, but also really try to understand the business by building a relationship with the leaders and understanding the business. So when you are actually providing those solutions in terms of how to optimize these contact centers, you're actually providing a more integrated solution because you could say, yes, I have taken into consideration how the business works, and I have built my relationship with the operations leader, so I kind of understand from my angle what I'm presenting is it will kind of fall in line with the operation leader is expecting as well. So it's kind of hugging both lines for a workforce management role. Like you got to be, a sound data, let's say, technician and also a methodologist for workforce theories, but you also have to be a good relationship builder and understand and have a curiosity to learn the business and build relationship with people that you're supporting.
Now, one of the reasons we're so thrilled to have you speaking is that you and your organization recently built out a comprehensive workforce management program. And so what were some of the challenges that you were seeing in your organization that really necessitated the need to take this step as it relates to WFM?
Yeah, some of the challenges, I would say, I think the first challenge from a workforce point of view is a lot of people, like I think what you alluded to, kind of don't understand what workforce is. So it's really kind of important for you to go and speak to these, I'm going to say, business leaders and kind of give them a little bit of education and background what workforce management is. And at the end of the day, you can kind of put it into like a summary of sentences saying workforce management is a practice where it will help you optimize your capacity of your contact centers while delivering operational efficiency savings and achieving same or even better quality results, right? So I think the first challenge was really the education between what workforce management and the value can bring. The second challenge is that, yeah, you could tell, it's going to save you money and it's going to help you improve your service level. But more importantly, you got to also be able to build relationships with these people that you're going to support, these leaders. Because at the end of the day, you're kind of going into their shop and they really want you to know their business and get to know the people that you'll be working with, right? So that's not a really challenging part, but although it could be for some people, like if you're not, I'm going to say, willing to kind of put in the time to build relationships, because that's just really more of an effort and time matter. More of an effort and time. That's what's required, right? Because you have to put the time and effort to know the people, know the business, right? So I would say that was one of, I'm going to say, not a challenge, but something, a time thing that you have to be aware about, that when you speak to these business leaders, that you have to make sure you put the time and effort to build a relationship, to show your credibility behind it. And then once you build a relationship, you kind of understand the business. The third part is kind of tying when you educated them about the workforce management values and practices and how it could actually be applied to their specific line of business. So very tailored, customized solutions that you could bring forward at that point. So I think those three things in the beginning, with any time you're kind of integrating onboarding a contact center, I would say it's a challenge, but it's something that one has to, that's probably the steepest learning curve that any WFM, I'm going to say, department or leaders would have to go through each time.
Yeah, and so I find that very interesting what you brought up there, because you really spoke to the fact that different business leaders, different department leaders, they're going to have slightly different objectives and different focuses. And yet on the same token, you kind of want to make sure that you have a big picture approach to empowering employees and performing and delivering a great customer experience. This is sort of a unified business objective. So how, on the one hand, do you make sure that you have a unified approach to getting your employees where they need to be so that they can deliver for your customers, while on the other hand, accounting for all the individual nuance and quirks and unique capabilities and needs of each department? Should you have one workforce management strategy that kind of takes into account everyone's needs? Should you build a different one for each line of business or each contact center? How do you kind of figure all that out?
Yeah, so I would say you got to kind of, for me, the way that I've been successful so far is actually building a unique workforce strategy for each of the lines of businesses or contact centers that you're supporting. Because if you kind of go the other way where you kind of do a blanket sheet of WFM approaches, right, and then you kind of try to implement, sometimes it just doesn't work for the business. I can give you specific examples before. I remember one time, from a workforce methodology or a thing, one of the best things is that if you have a lot of siloed answering groups, so you have population A, population B, they answer different types of calls, and that's how the contact center is managing its capacity. But what you run into situations is that sometimes population B will be answering all these calls while population will be idling and vice versa. So you're not really optimizing the capacity at that point of the contact center. And what you run into is inefficient use of capacity. But sometimes that is and then the easy solution there is, just cross-train everybody so everyone can answer all types of calls, right? However, from an efficiency perspective, it could be better, but you always have to take into consideration of the business as well, right? Maybe there is a reason why they set up those two different groups, right? Because they have two different skill sets. Maybe population B is a better selling team, so you want to make sure all the sales calls go to the sales team, and you kind of ensure that the sales team can capitalize on the sales, while population A are more, I'm going to say, loyalty or retention people are better at retaining clients, and that's where they split it up. So kind of understanding that and then not going in there as a blanket sheet approach and say, just cross-train everybody. But with that being said, once you kind of learn something about that business, you could start recommending things like, hey, by the way, did you know you could actually cross-train these two groups? However, what we could do is when a sales call comes in, we could actually give a preference to the sales skilled agents first before it goes to the retention or loyalty agents, or vice versa. And only the overflow will occur when one of those calls that came in for the specific line of business specific line of agents who can take those calls are all occupied, then it overflows. So you can actually provide those type of solutions where by just really getting to learn the business, and I really keep hammering this home, is that you get to learn the business and then you can actually provide those type of customized, tailored solution approaches from a workforce management point of view, that could actually help, I'm going to say, from workforce management, improving its capacity of a contact center, but also help the business to drive their other results like sales or net promoter scores or other type of, I'm going to say, KPIs of a contact center. So it's really just tailoring, I would say, every time you want to tailor your WFM solution to the business rather than kind of going with one overall methodology that you want to implement for all contact centers.
That said, I think earlier you mentioned a fundamental approach that most departments, most stakeholders are going to have, and that is the idea of sort of increasing quality while increasing efficiency or decreasing cost. That's going to be a pretty standard workforce management objective. When you're actually looking at your processes, looking at the technology, looking at the way you're managing the workforce, looking at how you're doing things like training and scheduling and forecasting, whatever it may be there, how do you sort of know whether you're on the right track to actually boost quality and reduce cost versus just doing it for the sake of doing it? What are some of the kind of intermediate benchmarks you may look at to know if you built the correct WFM strategy?
So I think I think in the beginning then when you're speaking to businesses, you got to kind of set up milestones and key KPIs to look at from a workforce point of view that you are kind of going along the right path of what you kind of mentioned is kind of improving your WFM quality. So things like, hey, milestone 1, like from 0 to 6 months, right? Here's some of the milestones. We'll establish a WFM team. We'll implement the WFM processes such as intraday management, which is just making sure that every day you're optimizing your contact center capacity to the best of its abilities, scheduling and making sure all the agents are scheduled properly at the right time, and also capacity planning, meaning that we will establish a proactive hiring plan where we look into the future to ensure that we are hiring the people at the right time and to account for all the attrition that may occur or any boost in call volume that may occur or anything that might actually be impact to the capacity. So you can set up these milestones saying from 0 to 6 months. Then in the beginning, this is the team will be built, and these are the, I'm going to say, WFM processes that will kind of roll out. And from 6 months to 12 months is then, okay, once his processes are rolled out, we can start measuring, I'm going to say, the success of WFM implementation. So that could be, you could tie it right to finance and say, okay, let's compare like how the contact center was operating last year at this time with how many FTEs and this year at this time with how many FTEs. Obviously, from a directional point of view, if you have fewer FTEs, that's the first check mark. You say, okay, we're operating at fewer FTEs. But the other side, you got to also look at like the WFM KPIs. Okay, we're operating with fewer FTEs, but are we actually achieving better service levels? Are we achieving better abandon rates? Are we achieving better average speed of answer? Those type of like key KPIs you could kind of bake into the, I'm going to say, the report card of a WFM system. So in the very beginning, it's the kind of more qualitative measurement to ensure that you have a team built and you have implement these processes that you agree with the business together and say, these are the key points that we'll hit upon the beginning of the introduction of the WFM team. And then afterwards, let's say, once the introduction and implementation of the WFM team has occurred, then you agree with the business and this is how we're going to capture if we're being successful or not. And it's usually tied into like dollar operating expense, like what I talked about from FTE perspective, or the overall cost of the running the contact center from an FTE perspective, and also like the quality of the services, quality of the WSM, the contact center KPIs, such as service level, abandon rate, average speed of answer, abandon rate. So you got to make sure that you kind of speak with the businesses to align each of the businesses to align on the goals, and really educate the businesses, this is how we can prove or we can show that WFM has been successful or not. So ensuring that you sit with the business in the beginning, work out the qualitative and the quantitative objectives, and then ensure that you meet on a monthly basis, bi-monthly basis, quarterly basis to kind of go over each of those, I'm going to say, metrics that you set up to kind of make sure everyone's aligned on the same page in terms of how progress is occurring.
Now, one of the big talking points within our customer contact space is this idea of allowing agents to start to focus on higher value work, more meaningful engagement with customers. That's sort of the talking point when we're talking about automation, when we're talking about digital engagement, when we're talking about predictive analytics. It's always, what can we do to let agents be more productive with their time and engage with customers more regularly than they are, say, doing repetitive back office tasks? Obviously, there's some clear ramifications for workforce management in WFM. So I'm wondering how you've thought about that. Have you done anything, or do you have any recommendations for using workforce management to identify what can be done to allow agents to focus on higher value work and then do that work better than they were previously?
Yeah, I guess higher value work versus non-high value work. Yeah, I think that is where the trend of the operations, the context is heading, is really trying to determine what is high value work, what is not high value work, and how does the contact centers need to kind of adapt to itself. So I guess I could give you one example is that right now, one of the businesses that we're kind of helping out with is we call it the chat social email team, right? Where we have emails and and chats and social media SMS requests from clients coming in. And what we found out is in the emails, we staff for quite a few agents to actually answer emails. But when the team did a deep dive, and they noticed that most of these emails are quite basic transactional type of requests, like what's my account balance, when is my next payment due date. So those type of things, what the team has been able to do is when these emails come in, we're actually able to, let's say, automate, I think that was the key word that you kind of brought up in the question, is that we can automate these, pick up these key, I'm going to say, specific phrases in the questions of the emails, and then actually inform the client, oh, by the way, you could visit our FAQ site that will actually house all the information the answers to your questions that you're looking for. So what I guess overall the system was able to do at that point was, let's say you get 100 emails, you're able to filter out 50% of those 100 emails. So 50 of those emails to become automated, to be automatically going to be answered by, let's say, lack of a better word, like a system that can guide the client to get the answers to questions they need. And the remaining 50 emails will actually flow to the agent. And the agent at that point, like what we said, higher value transactional work is that those are more specific questions that related to either it could be upselling to the client, retaining the client. So that's how one of the things that we looked into was kind of doing a deeper dive into the transactions that you want to service your clients on and really determine okay, is this transaction a non-value or a value add, and then see if you can kind of automate it. So using the example as an email could be one. Or other things I think a lot of contact centers do is that when you get a call into the contact center, we try to filter out the calls through the IVR system. So once again, if it's easy things like, oh, what's my amount on my account, or what's my due date, the client can actually punch in their account number and I'm going to say a 4-digit ID code, password code, and then they could access their account through the IVR, and the IVR can inform this information and only filter the calls that is high-value transactions to the agents, where it could be related to, once again, selling or retaining the client. So those are deep dives into the information, deep dives into the I'll say it requires a deep dive into the transactions that the agents are handling, and kind of really do try to separate between what's high value and non-high value add.
Makes perfect sense. And then sort of one final thing I wanted to ask is, whenever we talk to people after they've implemented a new technology or started a new project, they always have something that they're really excited about, this cool new feature, or this new thing that they found out that they wish they'd been doing for the last 30 years. So now that you have a WFM in place, you kind of have made this journey, you've embarked on better managing your workforce, what is maybe the coolest new feature or functionality that you have in terms of how you manage your contact centers and operations that you didn't have previously?
So I can talk about my old, it's not with CIBC, but just before I joined CIBC, I worked for a company called Bel Air Direct. And the cool functionality for the agents, this is for the agents really, is that, when historically when agents wanted to swap shifts or request for vacation day, anytime I'm going to say the structure of the agent's shift is going to change, the old method was, okay, you know what, go fill out this intake form or send an request to the email to the WFM, I'm going to say team. And what this does is that sometimes the agents might not miss some of the pivotal information that you need to for a WFM team to see, okay, do I approve or deny this request? So there's a lot of back and forth. So it's kind of frustrating from WFM team, and kind of frustrating from the agent side, right? Because it's always back and forth, and the agent's original request wasn't handled right away, wasn't anything came here. So one of the systems that you could implement, and I'm not giving any, this is like a paid promotion or anything, but it was through Aspect EWFM. They did have a module called Empower. And what this allows to do is an agent for them to log into a web portal where they can see all their schedules, and they could actually make the request through these web portals. So actually, it doesn't actually go to a WFM team, but based on the rules that the WFM team set up, the agent's request for a shift swap or changing the breaks and lunches, or even like a last-minute vacation or personal day request can be automatically approved. And once it gets automatically approved, the agent gets a notification. It updates their web portal, so their schedule gets automatically updated. Their supervisors are notified. And at the same time, the coding that's required, because all these changes require coding entries into the system, doesn't have to be manually done. It's actually automatically processed by the system itself. So I would say that's one of the cool features. I would say before I joined CIBC, one system I helped kind of implement with the team together, and it kind of hits two fronts. It kind of creates efficiency or operating efficiency within the WFM team, but also kind of improves the employees' engagement and morale, because their requests are now instantaneously approved or denied, so they get the answer right away. And another cool feature is that they're not only bound by being in the office to make these requests. You could actually log in through your own PC at home, or now there's a mobile edition as well, where you can go through the mobile phone as well and make these changes. So it's a 24/7 access that the agents have to make changes to their schedules, as long as it meets the business needs, right? So I feel like that's a cool feature that I hope that most WFM teams and contact centers can implement in the future.
Yeah, that sounds really valuable. And again, every organization out there is looking for that leg up to figure out how you can take conventional contact center practices, turn them on their head to create a scenario where agents are happier, more productive, more engaged, and therefore better able to connect with customers. And meanwhile, from a management or leadership perspective, you have more insight into what these agents are doing, more opportunities to shape their behaviors in real time. And it certainly sounds like when you adopt a commitment to WFM, when you really think about the needs of your departments, what they're trying to achieve, what agents go through in trying to achieve those, when you put all that together and then you look for the right processes, the right initiatives, the right technology, you're going to create a scenario where your contact center is a true source of value for the business. Thomas, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
No problem, Brian. It's my pleasure.
And definitely really look forward to having you out in Vegas. Can't wait. Again, the 20th anniversary of the world's leading customer contact event series. That's Customer Contact Week. That's CCW Vegas. Can't wait to see everyone there. And for CCW Digital, this has been Brian Cantor.